What were Lord Sidious's deeper thoughts about Boba Fett, the greatest Mandalorian bounty hunter in the entire galaxy? Despite the Sith Order's history of frequently employing the work of bounty hunters, Sidious stands out among them as being one who finds the entire process to be quite tedious, and even outright an unpleasant affair. We've talked before on this channel about why Palpatine disliked working with bounty hunters, with the biggest reason being that they were greedy and unreliable, turning tail the moment that things got hairy and taking the credits with them. Palpatine admitted before that like all things, hunters had their uses, but that his respect for them was far from complete. However, there was a single bounty hunter in all of the lore that Darth Sidious would give a great deal of credit towards, and one might say that he even admired him. And to take it even further, grew to respect Boba Fett, something that was nearly impossible for a non-Force sensitive, and even more rare to earn a legitimate compliment from the Emperor. And we have reason to believe that Palpatine respected Boba Fett on the same level as someone like Tarkin. So what did Sidious say about Boba that shows us this great respect? And what did Boba Fett do to earn him the personal compliments of the Lord of the Sith? Well, come along with us as we open up a holocron and find out what the Emperor truly thought of the #1 bounty hunter in the galaxy. Our source for today's video comes from the first book in the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy. The setting is 0 BBY pre-Death Star destruction at the Emperor's palace. At the time, a noble prince named Scizor was holding an audience with Sidious and Vader. Prince Scizor at this time was the secret leader of the Black Sun Syndicate, and he was looking for ways to snake his way to the top of the food chain, getting in good with the Emperor himself. He was proposing in this meeting to Sidious that the Empire needed to employ more bounty hunters to their cause. His reasoning was that the Emperor's stormtroopers and admirals had loyalty but lacked creativity, with the prince saying that this was impeding their ability to stop the rebels. Scizor proposed that they use the cunning and creative guile of the bounty hunters in order to give the Empire an edge against the rebellion. Sidious was reluctant to accept this advice though, as the bounty hunter guild at this time was a bit of a joke. You see, in this era, the guild had gotten lazy, and they were being run by a council of senile old hunters, those that spent most of their days getting drunk. Those members of the guild needed to be a part of it for benefits, as going out on their own was not earning them anywhere near enough credits, as they were simply not skilled enough. Needless to say, most bounty hunters did not have a great reputation. Their greed was constantly overriding their desire to actually complete a job that they were given. And case in point, Boba was bringing in a bounty for one of the Hutts, and the bounty desperately offered to bribe Boba Fett more than the price of his freedom. But Boba declined and refused to accept the bribe. Terrified and confused, the bounty hunter was asked why, and he said that he was under the impression that most hunters were willing to do anything for the credits. But Boba Fett explained to him that those hunters were fools for trading in the short-term greed in exchange for their reputation. Boba Fett was the #1 bounty hunter because he always completed his job. All this was put in a picture to state that the bounty hunter community at this point, and why Boba was very different from them. In an era where the bounty hunters had become a joke, Boba Fett was anything but. Prince Scizor recommended to Palpatine that they use an elaborate plan to completely abolish the Bounty Hunters Guild. That way the hunters would become independent and therefore far more competitive, hungrier, and more ruthless, attempting to make a living of their own. Scizor's plan was to use Boba Fett himself to carry out this directive, and he began to explain to the Emperor about Boba. But that's when Sidious stopped him, and this is what the Emperor said about Boba Fett. Palpatine said, quote, "There is little that I do not know of in this galaxy. I know more than you can imagine, Scizor. You must remember that. And I know a great deal about Boba Fett and the others, the ones who belong to the Bounty Hunters Guild. Before you ever came to my court, I was aware of Fett. Things that you may regard as a mystery are not a secret to me. He wears the armor of the Mandalorian warriors. He earned the right to wear that armor by his own prowess. Lord Vader possesses some of the knowledge that belonged to the Mandalorians. I possess even more. Believe me, you deal with Boba Fett at your own peril, but in that, he is unique among the other hunters." Palpatine has a remarkable amount of praise for Boba. As we know, he was aware of Jango Fett, who Dooku used as the template for the clone army. Even back in the day, Dooku talked up the skill of Jango to Sidious, as Dooku recalled the story of Jango killing 6 Jedi with his bare hands. Palpatine was previously aware of the Fett name, so it makes sense that he would keep at least one eye on the next Fett in line in order to keep tabs in one of the best warriors in the entire galaxy, and one wearing Mandalorian armor with Mandalorian skills. What Sidious says about Boba indicates that it goes deeper than him just recognizing the name for Boba's father though, as it is revealed that Darth Sidious took special tabs on Boba Fett. He didn't just know that he was around and knew of his name, but took special interest in the hunter. What's interesting is it's also clear that Vader also did his own research on Boba. What's remarkable is that Sidious allowed Boba Fett to remain once he attempted to even stomp out the rest of the Mandalorian cause. He doesn't view Boba Fett as a threat directly to the Empire, but Sidious clearly recognizes his skills and his talents, telling the prince that not only that Boba Fett was unique to the bounty hunters, but that the prince will deal with Boba Fett at his own peril. Rarely does any being gain this kind of recognition of deadliness from the Dark Lord. Even Palpatine himself is warning others about how dangerous Boba is. While the Emperor likely cares very little for the sentiments of honor, he respects someone who chooses to get the job done at any cost. For the very reason that Sidious does not like other bounty hunters, which were unreliable, Boba Fett never had that issue. This made him a very useful asset. Also, Sidious only regards someone as lethal if they possess knowledge of the Force, but the way Palpatine talks about Boba is from a place of understanding that not only his skill, but his intelligence as well makes him formidable. More formidable likely than the common Jedi would have been. But our story continues, and it is ultimately proven correct, as Boba Fett manages to take down the Bounty Hunters Guild. Dengar would even comment that Boba's finest traps often didn't lie with the most updated weaponry, but rather within his Mandalorian mind. Boba Fett was sharp-witted, and very few things ever escaped his notice. Boba Fett was as good of a detective as he was a hunter. Boba was also known for being very cautious and was always 2 steps ahead of his enemies, and it was for this reputation that many believed that he would be extremely difficult to kill. Boba had many enemies and grudges that were coming after him on a daily basis, but all of them failed. And this skill is even something that reached the ears of the Emperor. There is a part of Sidious that finds fascination with those who are able to kiss death and then leave them at the altar, those who can survive fatal injuries or situations that would have killed others. While sometimes, like the cases with Darth Maul, Sidious finds the situation to be more of an annoyance and definitely a challenge to his plans, he still can't help but admire the perseverance. After all, once Maul survived his literal bisection, Sidious came to capture him personally. Palpatine, when he saw Vader alive on Mustafar, didn't leave him to die, but brought him back to health within his suit. These are examples of the Sith being able to live with the help of the dark side, and how much more fascinating to Sidious it would be if a regular human managed to constantly skirt and weave around death just as frequently as he did. This is just 4 years prior to the events of Return of the Jedi, and to punctuate Palpatine's point, Boba Fett survived the Sarlacc pit in both Legends and canon. Palpatine cares little for the Code of Honor, but the fact that he went so far as to mention that Boba Fett had earned the right to wear this Mandalorian armor says much more about his respect for the hunter. He was willing to admit without stipulation that Boba was worthy of the Mandalorian way, the Mandalorians that Palpatine had destroyed because of the threat that they posed to the Empire. Palpatine knew just how deadly the Mandalorians were, even without the leadership of the Sith. He knew that the Mandalorians had gone to war with the Republic off of their own merit and skill in combat. With such a deep history of them contending against Force wielders, it is no wonder that Sidious was wary of them. But Fett had proved himself to be no threat to the Empire, quite the opposite. He wanted a paycheck, and that was to be respected, and so Sidious and Vader would provide him ample jobs, trusting in Boba Fett when they hated other hunters. And that, my friends, is what Sidious truly thought of the #1 bounty hunter in the galaxy. Tell us, had you ever wondered what Palpatine thought of Boba Fett, and were you shocked that he outright admitted that he respected him a great deal? What are your thoughts on this? And as always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today, and may the Force be with you.